I very much regret the intemperate language that the Select Committee have chosen to use. Nobody likes to make redundancies. Nobody likes to have to shrink the armed forces and the MOD civilian workforce. But we're dealing with a massive deficit, an inherited black hole, and we've got to get the finances on an even keel. We've got targets for reduction in the size of the armed forces and the civilian workforce, and it just happens to be the case that in the first tranche we had enough volunteers so that all the redundancies on the civilian side could be voluntary, but not enough volunteers in the armed forces. So unfortunately some compulsory redundancies had to be made. The armed forces voluntary redundancy terms are very much more generous than the civilian service redundancy terms. It simply I think reflects the fact that many people join the armed forces, have a very strong vocation for the armed forces. That's what they want to do, that's where they want to be, and looking around them, the jobs market isn't particularly good at the moment, that they're attracted to think about moving out of the armed forces. Much is done already to offer training for opportunities for other areas where there are skill shortages to people who are targeted for redundancy in the armed forces, and some people do retrain and go on to do other things. But it's simply not the case to say that because someone is halfway through training as a pilot, that means they would automatically make a good medical technician. They might be interested, they might have the skills required, but that has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis.